So first we'll go through what it is, and then we'll watch that video, and obviously we got 5 minutes, and we'll take a break here. All right, so this one is definitely more complex. Moving of carbon around the biosphere. A lot of stuff going on here. I'll read this to you, and then we'll talk about the picture here. So producers take up carbon from the atmosphere via photosynthesis, right? They absorb CO2, pass it on to consumers and decomposers. Some inorganic carbon sediments precipitate out of the water to form sedimentary rock, while some organic carbon may be buried and become fossil fuels. Respiration by organisms returns carbon to the atmosphere in the water, right? So photosynthesis takes the CO2, respiration gives it back. So there, again, there's your cycle, part of the cycle. Combustion of fossil fuels and other organic matter returns carbon to the atmosphere as well. So there's natural sources, right? Over here they have fires. There could be natural forest fires. Some forests actually are healthier when the underbrush catches on fire and burns for a while, and it kind of clears things up a little bit. So some forest fires that are natural aren't always bad. Wildfires, we'll call them. So anyways, that's just kind of the summary of what's going on here. Exchange, now they have some terms here. No, that's the next one. But exchange. So let's make sure we get these words down. So exchange, what does that mean? It means CO2 in the atmosphere and CO2 in the ocean are switching spots, swapping with each other. So that's exchange. CO2 in the atmosphere, CO2 dissolved water. So you got exchange. So you got CO2 in the air, atmosphere, exchange with CO2 in the ocean, the dissolved CO2 in the ocean. And as I try to demonstrate on the second day there, when oceans are getting warmer, it's disrupting that balance, but it's also, well, it's not only the balance of the exchange, but the pH, ocean acidification, a lot is happening with that. So we'll talk about the human impacts later. But that's exchange. Sedimentation. So calcium carbonate precipitates out of water as sediments. So you have a lot of shells and a lot of material in the ocean that is calcium carbonate, like those shells you have in the water and the vinegar. So sedimentation is when it precipitates out of the water as sediments. So some of the carbon gets trapped in there. So you got sedimentation, part of the carbon cycle, which you have sedimentary rocks. So this picture here in the water, it's just where they happen to draw those. That's photosynthesis and respiration, right? So you got your producers doing photosynthesis, you got your decomposers and your consumers using that, and then you got your respiration, which is giving the CO2 back. So we've already talked about that, but that's part of the carbon cycle. Up here, it's kind of more of the same. You got photosynthesis converting to sugars, you got respiration, sugars going back, giving off CO2. So again, we've talked about that. Volcanoes can put carbon back into the atmosphere. Combustion, so fossil fuels and plant matter converted into CO2 very fast. So that's a sink. Producing carbon dioxide, right? Sorry, producing carbon dioxide. Fossil fuels would be a sink. So in other words, the carbon gets trapped in there. Sedimentary rocks would be a sink. The carbon's trapped in there. So when we extract the fossil fuels, we burn them, and then we are returning the CO2. But this isn't a nice, balanced, without us, negative feedback loop. But with us, that's positive because we are adding way more CO2 by burning all those fossil fuels. So where do the fossil fuels come from? So burial, some carbon can be buried. So when it gets trapped under the surface, organic matter, and it can't be decomposed, it stays there for millions of years and it turns to fossils and fossil fuel. So I know there's a lot of different arrows, but a lot of this kind of repeats. All right. So those are the key words. I know I stopped writing. Hold on, give me one. We'll just go to the bell here. Synthesis, good. Exchange, good. Yeah, I do have some other things I'm going to write down here. So I guess we'll just take a break now, and then we'll carry on. And when we come back, we're going to watch that video. Then we'll do the nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, and we're done with Unit 1. So...